The quiet hum of the car's engine was the only sound as I made my way through the winding, narrow roads leading to the remote motel nestled in the woods outside Eugene, Oregon. It felt like the perfect weekend getaway. I'd been exhausted, both physically and emotionally, and I needed a break, a simple escape. The city's noise, the endless piles of books at the library, the cold disconnection I'd felt after a bad breakup, all of it had drained me. When Nathan's profile popped up on Eden Connect, I didn't think twice. He was charming, funny, and seemed like exactly the kind of guy I needed to meet. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, and soon enough, we were making plans to meet at the motel for a weekend of peace and quiet. A small part of me had hoped that something more would come from it, that maybe this could be the beginning of something real. But as I pulled up the motel, I already felt a twinge of discomfort. The place looked a little too run down, more like a relic of the past that had been abandoned by time itself. The sign hanging out front was faded and barely legible, and the paint on the wooden building had chipped away. Still, I shrugged it off. It was secluded, quiet, and I was here to unwind. Nathan was waiting outside the entrance when I arrived, looking as handsome as his photos, though with a hint of nervousness in his posture. He waved as I parked, his smile warm but distant, and I couldn't quite place why it felt off. Maybe it was a strange way his eyes kept darting to his phone as he greeted me, as though checking for messages or waiting for someone. "Hi," I said, stepping out of the car, attempting to shake off the unsettling feeling. "It's good to finally meet you in person." "Yeah, you too," he replied, his voice tight. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "You want to go inside? It's a bit chilly out here." I nodded, trying to ignore the instinctive wariness that crept up my spine. We walked toward the room, and I couldn't help but notice how eerily quiet the place was. There wasn't a soul around. No sound of traffic, no distant chatter, just the quiet rustling of the wind in the trees. Once inside, I sat on the edge of the bed as Nathan went to the small table near the window to fiddle with his phone. He barely looked at me, and when he did, his glances were quick and fleeting, almost as if he was avoiding eye contact on purpose. "So, how's work?" I asked, trying to make small talk. He responded in a distracted tone, barely lifting his gaze from the phone. "It's fine. Busy. How about you? Librarian, right?" "Yeah, I love it, but it can get overwhelming sometimes. Too many books, not enough time." I chuckled, trying to break the tension, but he didn't laugh. His response was flat, and I could sense something wasn't right. As the evening wore on, I tried to shake the growing discomfort. Maybe it was nerves. Maybe he was shy. Still, the questions he asked me seemed off. He was probing into my personal life, asking about my past relationships, my family, and even my thoughts on marriage. I could feel a coldness in his voice, a dissonance in his words that left me uneasy. I had hoped for a relaxed dinner, but instead, it felt more like an interrogation. "Are you always so guarded?" he asked suddenly, his tone sharp. "Guarded?" I blinked, surprised by the question. "Yeah, you don't seem to open up much. I mean, we've been talking for weeks, but there's still so much you're not sharing," he said, his voice unnervingly low. I stared at him, unsure how to respond. I didn't owe him anything, not yet, but something about his persistence unsettled me. "I'm just here to relax. Let's not make it too complicated," I replied, trying to laugh it off. His expression hardened, his smile vanishing completely. "Relax," he echoed, his eyes narrowing as he leaned closer. "Relaxing is overrated. I think people need to confront things. You should confront your fears. Face them." I froze, my heart beating in my chest. Sure," I stammered, feeling my palms sweat. "Maybe later." The night continued with an oppressive silence between us, and I could barely stomach another moment of it. I tried to excuse myself to go to bed, but something in the air felt wrong. The room seemed to be closing in on me. My head began to swim, a dizziness that wasn't quite physical but more like a mental fog. I couldn't focus, couldn't think clearly. Sometime after midnight, I woke to the faint sound of whispers. I was lying on my back, staring up at the ceiling, unable to move. It was as if my body had turned to stone. My limbs felt heavy, paralyzed, while the whispers grew louder. They were soft at first, almost inaudible, but soon they began to take shape. Words I couldn't understand, muffled and garbled, like they were coming from far away, or maybe from inside my own mind. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. Panic surged through me. My mouth opened, but nothing. My throat was dry, constricted. I was trapped in my own body. The room seemed darker now, as if the shadows were stretching and twisting, suffocating the light. The whispers grew more frantic, more intense, as though they were closing in on me. Something, or someone, was in the room with me, moving just out of sight. And then, in a terrifying moment of clarity, I saw him. Nathan. He was standing at the foot of the bed, his form looming in the shadows. His face was expressionless, his eyes wide and unblinking, his mouth twisted into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He wasn't speaking. He was just staring at me. I finally regained control of my limbs, my body trembling as I bolted upright. I couldn't breathe. The air felt thick with something unholy, suffocating. I jumped out of bed and stumbled toward the bathroom, desperate for some kind of refuge. But the moment I entered, I froze. Nathan was standing there too. He hadn't made a sound, hadn't moved, but he was there just staring. His grin was wider now, disturbingly so. I couldn't process it, couldn't make sense of what was happening. I turned to run, but the door wouldn't open. It was locked from the outside. Tears blurred my vision, and my heart pounded as I scrambled against the door, throwing my weight against it, but it wouldn't budge. I could hear Nathan behind me, his footsteps coming closer, slow and deliberate. "You should have faced your fears, Jessica," he whispered. His voice was a strange mix of coldness and something darker. "You should have trusted me." Then, as if from nowhere, everything went silent. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in the morning light. The sun filtered weakly through the curtains, and I was alone. My body ached, my head throbbed, and the motel room was eerily quiet. Nathan was gone, but my things, my belongings were scattered across the floor, a mess of clothes and books, a chaos I didn't remember creating. I rushed out of the room, but the door wouldn't open. It was locked from the outside. A few hours later, the police found me, alone, trembling, confused, and unable to explain what had happened. Nathan was never seen again. And the motel? It was closed for good, its reputation forever tarnished. The locals said the place had always been cursed. They whispered that Nathan had been a guest who never checked out. And that night, I learned that there were some things that never left, not even when you try to run. The wind howled against the walls of the old farmhouse, as it had every night since I moved in. It wasn't a violent wind, just persistent, a soft, cold whisper that seemed to speak through the cracks and crevices in the structure, filling the silence of the house when it should have been empty. I had hoped the isolation would bring me peace. After everything that had happened, I thought being alone would help me heal, but instead, it only made things worse. The house itself wasn't much to look at. It had been abandoned for years, the windows grimy with the dust and neglect, the walls cracked and peeling. It was perfect, though. It was far enough away from the city, far from the people who knew me or knew what I'd gone through, far from the memories of a life I didn't want to remember. I needed to escape, to find something to start over. So I moved here alone. For the first few nights, I slept deeply, too deeply, in fact. It was a kind of numbing, blessed relief. But then the nightmare started. I didn't know what was real and what was in my head. The dreams felt too real, like they were warnings. I would wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, heart racing. The shadows in the room stretched longer than they should have, creeping along the walls as if they were alive. Every time I closed my eyes, I could feel them watching me. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just the stress of moving into a new place. It was just my mind playing tricks on me. But that was before the paralysis. One night, I woke up again, feeling the oppressive weight of darkness pressing in on me. I couldn't move. My body felt like it was sinking into the mattress, trapped beneath an invisible force. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My eyes darted around the room, desperate to find something that would make sense of the suffocating silence. That's when I saw it. The figure outside my window, a shadow, tall and indistinct, standing motionless in the yard. It wasn't a person. It was something else, a presence, its form blurred, shifting in and out of focus as if it was made of smoke or darkness itself. My heart pounded, and I tried to move, to get out of bed, to scream, but I couldn't. The figure stood there, watching, its presence suffocating me in the dark. I wanted to tear my eyes away, to convince myself it wasn't real, but I couldn't. Just as I thought I would suffocate under its gaze, I broke free from the paralysis. I bolted upright, gasping for air. The room was still. No figure, no shadow, just the normal quiet of the farmhouse. I was shaking, drenched in sweat. My arm felt heavy, like I had been holding something tight for too long. But nothing had been there. Or had it? I tried to tell myself it was just a hallucination, the kind of thing that happened when you're exhausted and stressed. But the fear clung to me like a second skin. It wasn't over. The next night, it happened again. Only this time, I was ready. I knew I had to confront whatever it was. I got up out of bed, my feet cold against the wooden floor, and went to the window. I shouldn't have. The shadow was back. But this time, it was closer. It seemed to be moving, pacing back and forth outside. There was a feeling, an unmistakable presence, like someone or something was trying to get inside. I couldn't take it anymore. I flung open the window, intending to yell at whatever it was to leave me alone. But in that moment, my foot caught on the edge of the windowsill. My body pitched forward, and I fell, tumbling down the stairs in a frantic attempt to escape the terror. I landed with a sickening crack, my arm snapping beneath me as I hit the floor. Pain exploded to my body, and I screamed out, but it only seemed to make the darkness around me press harder. My vision blurred, and the shadow outside the window was gone. It didn't matter. I couldn't escape the panic, the terror crawling beneath my skin. Days passed before I could even manage to lift myself from the floor. My arm was in a sling, broken, my body bruised and battered. But it wasn't the physical pain that lingered. It was the fear, the feeling of being watched, of something lurking just out of sight. I spent hours researching the house, hoping to find an explanation. I was desperate for anything to make sense of the horrors I had been experiencing. What I found, however, only made things worse. The farmhouse had once belonged to a woman named Evelyn. She had lived there with her partner, a man who was known for his violent temper. Neighbors had reported hearing arguments at all hours of the night, but no one had dared to intervene. And then, one evening, Evelyn had simply disappeared. The man was found days later, wandering the woods, but there was no sign of her. They believed she'd been murdered, though no body was ever found. But there was more. As I dug deeper, I found reports of a strange woman in the area, seen wandering the woods at night. Some claimed to hear whispers in the wind, and others swore they could see her silhouette in the windows of the farmhouse, even though it had been abandoned for years. The more I learned, the more I understood. The shadow I had seen, what I had felt, wasn't just a hallucination. It was her, Evelyn's spirit, still bound to the house, still searching for a way out of her torment. I couldn't leave. Not now. I had to confront it. Confront her. I had to help her find peace. One night, I sat in front of the window, waiting for the shadow to return. And it did. But this time, instead of fear, I felt a strange calm. I spoke softly, almost to myself, but I knew she could hear me. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I can help you. You don't have to stay here anymore." The wind howled, and the figure outside the window shifted, coming closer. I felt an icy coldness seep into my bones as the shadow pressed up against the glass, its form becoming clearer. It was her, Evelyn. Her eyes were empty, hollow, as if all life had been drained from her. The air thickened, and for a moment, I was sure I would suffocate. But then, she spoke, her voice distant and broken. "Please help me." With a final, breathless plea, the shadow faded. The house grew still, and the weight that had pressed on my chest for so long lifted. The next morning, the whispers stopped. The house felt empty, peaceful, even. It had been a long, painful road to this point, but I had done it. I had freed her. Or so I thought. That night, as I tried to sleep, I heard it, the whispering. Faint at first, like a murmur in the wind. It wasn't Evelyn's voice this time, though. It was someone else. Someone new. "Help me," the voice whispered, as the shadows in the corner of my room stretched longer. Some pasts, I realized, never truly leave.